Hi, everyone. Uh, it's great to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. It's wonderful to have the chance to talk to everyone in the QWorld community and to see how that community has grown over the last few years. So let me dive in with you to this talk. And so just in these few minutes we have together, I want to talk to you about why open source and quantum tech is pretty exciting and why it should be pretty exciting for you all in the audience as a way to get your first steps in quantum tech going, or how to expand what you've already been doing in quantum technologies. So my name is William Zeng, and I'm the founder and president at Unitary Fund. Unitary Fund is a nonprofit. We've been around for about 5 years, independently funded. And our mission is to help create a quantum technology ecosystem that benefits the most people. And the way we do this is that we think it'll best happen by funding something that's community-driven, by funding an open ecosystem so that more people can get involved more quickly and contribute more quickly to the many, many things we still need to solve on engineering and product and really research in order to get quantum technology to the bright future and potential that we believe it has. So there's 3 major programs we have today at Unitary Fund. The first is our microgrant program. The second is our research that we do internally, and the third is our community work. So in microgrants, we've given out many grants, more than 70 grants to folks in more than 20 countries over the last few years to build varieties of different kinds of projects. Now, these projects are, things that sit in between what other people are doing. So there's things that academics are really, really good at, like coming up with totally new ideas and writing research papers about them. And there's things that companies are good at, which is taking technologies ready to be applied and turning them into products that can be sold. But in quantum technologies, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's still left to build. These are things that you could maybe call sort of public goods. So things like standards, benchmarks, open source compilers, educational materials, outreach materials, all the networks, answers and questions on Stack Overflow, all the kind of stuff that makes a really rich and robust classical computing ecosystem and makes that ecosystem very successful, we need to develop inside of quantum technologies too. And so we do that by funding projects there with microgrants. For some larger things, which we can't fund just with microgrants, we have our in-house team work on them as well. So we do our own research, both with publications, but also building software or building platforms for benchmarking. I'll talk more about. That's our research team. And then thirdly, we help run a community. So we've got about 2,000 people on our Discord. We host talks online of different forms. We have open journal clubs. And in each of these, there's a whole bunch of ways for you to get involved. And so that's what this talk is going to be about. It's if you're excited about getting involved in quantum technologies, then open source can really be a great way to learn and a great way to build and demonstrate what you can do to help grow your career there. So I'll show you some ways to do that. So just as a reminder for why you might want to do that, there's a huge demand for skilled workers in quantum technologies. When I started in this field, it was a pretty niche academic discipline. It's now become the beginnings of a nascent industry. There's a long way still to go. But the number of people that are going through a traditional academic path which maybe we'll say master's level graduates yearly, is not close to the job postings that are available. And this is data from a recent McKinsey study. But there's a whole bunch more people, like many of you, who have been doing other things and have other kinds of skills, or just early in your career, and are trying to get involved. And we basically, what I'm trying to say is we need you. And so there's definitely a demand for the kind of skills you'll be able to develop by doing work in open source. And I contend that I think open source is really the most concrete way to build up your skill set, at least especially on the software side. So we ran at Unitary Fund, we ran the first quantum open source survey last year. We had about over 1,000 people answer, and a couple. You can see more survey results online down here, but a couple things that stand out. Only 55% are people that identify as researchers. A lot of them identify as software developers or hobbyists, and a large percentage of them don't have a quantum research background. but are still actively in the field of open source software and contributing. And so if this sounds like you, then open source is the way to go. You might think that, and some people in conversations that I have, that quantum computing is very complicated, quantum technology is very complicated. It definitely is a fascinating and interesting interdisciplinary field, but for a lot of things, you don't have to go get a PhD. And in fact, for some things, like writing good software, and I speak as someone who did the PhD path, it sometimes ends up with a lot of hacky physicist code, which is often a great starting point, but it's pretty different from what folks who come from other fields of real software engineering can contribute. And there's just a whole bunch that you can contribute without needing to go down the research and academia route. So one first thing I want to call your attention to is our microgrant program. So we fund $4,000, it's always $4,000 micro grants, and they're pretty quick turnaround. So far we've funded over 70 microgrants in over 20 countries, which have led to a bunch of publications, a bunch of open source libraries that are important in the field, a couple startups, one nonprofit, which is QWorld, which I think you're all probably pretty familiar with. And we try to keep it pretty lightweight. These are no strings attached. There's no equity involved. It's not a loan. And it's up to the winner of the project to decide how best to spend it. We aim at people who are explorers, so it doesn't mean it's necessarily people who've already done things in quantum computing. In fact, one of the things I'm most proud of this microgrant program are the support we've given to people who then end up, who their first thing in quantum was, and is now like a couple dozen of them, whose first thing in quantum was a microgrant project, but who now work full-time in the field at many different companies that you'd know. And so this includes, folks, software hobbyist engineers in Serbia, or master students in India who don't have a quantum technology or quantum computing program at their university, or in Africa. And we're able to help them develop their vision and also connect their project up to the existing ecosystem in the ways that that's important. So generally, these are open source projects, so often community projects. This 3 to 6 months is the usual duration, but again, that's not a fixed rule. And there's a pretty simple online application, which you can find at unitary.fund/grants. And also there you can see a whole bunch of the different grants that we've funded. Just as some recent examples of the sort of things that we funded in projects. So we funded a software library for generating random numbers with quantum computers, which is cross-vendor platform. So it works with different kinds of hardware backends. We funded a community called PIQE, Peak, for folks who are working together to build more educational materials and collaborative materials to get people into the space. We funded a circuit compiler, Hamiltonian simulation. We funded Danny, actually Samuel, is a high school student. So if there's, you can't be too young to get started. And Danny contributed some really useful benchmarks, these things called mirror circuit benchmarks for variational quantum algorithms. And benchmarking in this new space is so important because the technology is always changing. So if you have an idea, go check out the kind of things we've funded before. We also have a project ideas page where we have a few suggestions, and put together an application. We're happy to give feedback. One of the things I'm excited about with the program in particular, and we've got about 25 advisors in the community who look at and give advice and mentor our microgrant winners, is we can also help you not waste time on things that aren't that important. So sometimes there are microgrant applications from great people, and we say, what you're working on is interesting, but if you tweaked it maybe a little bit, then it might be more impactful. It's something someone else hasn't done. It's something we know people need. And sometimes our grant winners take that advice, but sometimes not, and that's fine. We're not always right. But we're really happy to think of that as guidance for you in trying to figure out what to work on. So as mentioned, you can hop onto unitary.fund and apply there. So another way to get involved is something that actually has just started, which is our annual Unitary Hack. And so this hackathon works a little bit differently from others. It's 2 weeks long, and it's a virtual hackathon. And one of the things, it's sometimes fun to get locked in a room over a weekend with some friends and see if you can build something. But a downside of that is you're often building from scratch. And it's hard to really build something that you know is useful, and it's hard to build something that's going to stick around. And so the way Unitary Hack works is we've partnered with over 30 different existing open source, basically the major open source projects in the space. And the maintainers of those projects have been allocated funds from us to put bounties on issues that they think would be good for participants in the hackathon to resolve. And if you close a pull request, then you will win that bounty. We've got thousands of dollars in bounties available. Even if we have about 650 people signed up. So there's a bunch of people checking it out, but it's not too late. You can always join in the middle. And we'd love to see you on GitHub. And so while I'm talking about Unitary Hack, it's also worth mentioning in the context of the microgrants that the microgrants don't have to be for a totally new project or for a new repo. Actually, often we really like projects that contribute back to things that already exist instead of trying to start something totally new. So maybe you've been using some quantum programming library and it's just totally lacking this one integration or this new feature. It's a well-used one, but you just wish it had this additional feature. Then a great project would be to add that feature. And it's also always good to have already checked with the maintainers a little bit, but we can also help you get in touch with them if you have any. In any case, we'd be really excited to see you at Unitary Hack over the next couple of weeks. And so for tracking Unitary Hack or for meeting other people who are working on it, or just for generally getting involved in our community, we use Discord as our sort of main community channel. Yeah, of course, you can sign up with your email on our website as well, and you'll get you'll get regular information about events and also our quarterly updates on what we're funding and what we're seeing in the ecosystem. But for just chatting, you can hop on to discord.unitary.fund. Where we will run Unitary Hack, but also do more regular things. Like there are weekly community calls for different open source projects that happen in public rooms on that Discord. So if you're new to open source or you're just looking for a way to get involved, you can hop into any of the meetings from Metric or MITIC or the Quantum Intermediate Representation Alliance or the Quantum Toolbox in Python, QTIP, or others, and just see how open source works in the wild. It's how do people plan out milestones? How do people decide what to work on? How do people get feedback on new proposals and ideas? All of that stuff is important to make accessible, kind of like making the really quantum parts of it accessible too. So we'd love to see you there. We also on Quantum Wednesdays, we host an open hacking and journal club. Sometimes it's hacking, sometimes it's a journal club. Where we'll review papers that are relevant to some of the research that we're doing at Unitary Fund, or if it's just something that people think is interesting. And also, we also solicit people who want to present at Quantum Wednesdays too. So hope you can hop on there, and I'm just Will on the Discord, and hope you send me a ping, and I'm happy to see you there too. So another way to get involved is to go on GitHub and contribute to a couple of the open source projects that we're particularly involved in. There's obviously a lot of great ones out there, but I'll just mention a few that we've been spending a lot of time with. The first is called MITIC, and it's Python. It's a Python-based open source compiler for quantum error mitigation. So as many of you might know, quantum computers these days have pretty high error rates. And so one way to try and compile programs to be better when your computers have high error rates in their operations is to run less operations by making a program shorter. But it turns out that and that's what many compilers do, but there are other ways to make your programs more robust to errors, such as by taking a long program and slicing it up into smaller pieces, or by making it a statistical mixture of other programs in some clever way that makes it more robust to the noise on your processor. And so we built a lot of these techniques into MITIC. They can have an orders of magnitude more improvement of performance of how your algorithm runs. And we want to make that available to basically everyone in every front end and every back end. So whether or not you write in Circ or Penny Lane or Qiskit or you write OpenChasm or QIR or something like that. We want you to be able to use Mythic as a compiler, and we have weekly meetings that you can join that. A second big project we run in research is our metric project. This is a little bit newer than Mythic, and it's a community-driven quantum computing benchmarking platform. So there's many technologies being developed, and it's hard to compare them against each other. But a good way to do that would be to have a website where you can do one of two things. One is find a benchmark or find a task, and you can submit your performance against that task. Or you can submit a suggestion for a new kind of task. So for example, on metric, you can, why don't we just do this live? This is metric and a nice lovely reminder of Unitary Hack. And so as an example, we can check out the quantum volume task, which I'll just make a logarithmic plot here. Quantum volume is a nice sort of like randomized system test of how well a quantum computer performs. And over time, people have run different benchmarks on a whole bunch of different kinds of systems. So if we pick any one of these, like this one from 2019 was running on IBM Tokyo. And there's the information from its submission and the task against it. And so we can track performance over time on different metrics like this. And if you want to submit yours, you can just log in and make new submissions if you want. And thirdly, another project that we're happy to support as an affiliated project is QTIP, which is a quantum toolbox in Python. It's one of the OG open source projects in quantum. It's been going for more than 10 years. It's a simulation tool for quantum circuits and devices and quantum information, and it's had more than 1 million downloads. It's on qtip.org, and there's lots of active development there. So to summarize, why contribute to open source? Well, you can make a pretty big difference. It's a way to make a change in something that a lot of people use. It's a way to make a change in something that can affect the trajectory of quantum technologies, even if it's not a totally new quantum algorithm or a new piece of quantum hardware or a new quantum error correction technique. If you fix the API bugs that are not letting some people really use some useful technique, then you can make a big difference. Secondly, you can advance your career in quantum and in software in general. It's something that you can build openly and talk about. And thirdly, it's fun. It's a way for you to meet more people who are interested in something you're interested in and work with them, and then work with them right away. You can contribute code, but not just code. And part of the reason I mentioned that is that a lot of the people writing these kind of things are physicists first, so code is already a little bit secondary, and so things like infrastructure, documentation, UX design, data analysis, and user feedback don't necessarily come naturally to our community. So if you've got great suggestions there, then or experience there, or even just a beginner's mindset to actually go through the installation procedure and raise feedback and issues on projects, then that can help more than you know. And like I've had that experience on both sides. There's a bunch of ways to get started. There are projects on GitHub. You can check out the projects that are involved in Unitary Hack, for example. You don't have to work on a bounty issue. You can work on any issue you want. You can join us on Discord, or you can join the Unitary Hack hackathon that's going on now. So I just want to leave you finally with a couple different ways to get in touch with us. We're online, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter at Unitary Fund, and a whole bunch of the other usual places. You can find us on our Discord for the Mythic community call. There's a metric call actually at I think it's 6 a.m. Pacific, and then our Quantum Wednesdays group meeting at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And if you want to ping me, I'm just Will at unitary.fund. And I hope you take away from this that there's a bunch of ways to get involved in open source. If you need one place to go, just check out unitary.fund. And I hope to see you in a Discord or a GitHub repo soon. Thanks very much. Bye.